Good evening. I'd like to call the board meeting for Wednesday, September 9th, 2015 to order. Can we have a roll call, please? Mrs. Klein.
Yes, Mr. Nielsen.
Here.
Mrs. Evans.
Here.
Mr. Lewis is absent. Here. Mrs. Larson.
Here.
Mr. Alexandrovich.
Here.
Mrs. Witkowski.
Here.
And I am here.
Thank you. Has the meeting been properly posted, Dr. Pats?
Yes.
Thank you. Please rise and join us for the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you. Item 3 on the agenda is community comment. Per board policy, we allow up to 15 minutes of resident comment. Is there any comment tonight? If you don't mind, please come to the microphone and state your name and address.
My name is Linda Clayhaig, and my address is 3638 West Sherwood Drive. And the reason I'm here today is on behalf of my daughter. She's a senior at the high school, and she's in Japanese 5. And from day one, since she's been in 7th grade, she's been going through Japanese class. And her path in education was to go through all the Japanese and then go to the CAP program. Well, last year in March, she was told, and all the other students were, that the numbers weren't there. So they were going to have to stack classes. So they had to stack Japanese 4 or Japanese 5. And because of that, the UW system will not acknowledge that as a CAP program. Well, I'm here today to represent her and also other parents that have also spoke to me, and unfortunately they're not here, and students, that we just don't think this is fair. These aren't students that were just, you know, they're like above, they're close to 4.0 students. They invested all their time, and this was their career path, and now they're told, oh, well, the resources aren't there, and we can't do it. I did call, I talked to Dr. Pats, he referred me to Mr. Cohn, I've talked to other people, I've sent out emails to all the board, so all of them is, what it basically comes down to is that there's no resource for this, to have a separate class. Now, my daughter's been in the class for the last few days, and basically it's a shared class. It's not, she doesn't feel that she's getting her full class like she should, and it's basically you take a full class and the teacher goes through some, instruction. You have a worksheet, and then he goes to the next group and they do a worksheet, and that's it. It's not like what they used to have, and she feels that, and I feel too, they got shorted. And that's why I'm here today, to just let you know my opinion.
All right, thank you. As I've told you before, this is not an agenda item, and it wouldn't be on the agenda, but if Dr. Pats or Mr. Cohn would like to briefly address it.
We can, because the CAP issue is not a school issue. That's not our problem, so to speak.
Right.
And the fact that the class runs at all, I think, is the bigger issue. Because had we had lower numbers, there's the possibility that we would not even have run the class. So I think the fact that the districts, our number one obligation is to make sure that we have the ability to run a class. In the last 3 years, we've had 20 stacked classes. And resources is not the issue either, other than to say that if we were to separate that out, it would cost a new teacher. Well, then if we do it for those 20 classes, we would be spending about another $1.5 million just to offer classes that would not be stacked. And that's just not even feasible, nor is it economically responsible to do that. I think the fact that the kids that have the opportunity to take Japanese 5 is important, and they have that ability. It's early in the year yet, so the content of the class and the instruction, all that, I'm not going to even touch that because I don't know what goes on, and that's up to the teacher and so on and so forth. But the other part of that is that when UW-Oshkosh decided not to review or to renew the CAP commitment, there's still the ability of all those students to, when they go to college, to enroll for the class and test out of it and get the credit for it. In addition to that, they could also take the AP class. and test out of it for an additional 3 credits. So students have the opportunity, if the college credit is an issue for them, that's fine. But I think the most important thing, and actually the only thing the district is concerned about, is being able to offer the class, and being able to do that in a stack fashion is what we have before us, and it works. It has worked in many classes, and we will continue to do that. We would rather do that than not offer classes. I think that would be a bad way to go.
But when my response to that is that in the course guide, it does not state anything that if there's a minimum of a certain amount of students, you're talking 8 students that I'm aware of. It couldn't even be more. In fact, I just talked to a parent over the weekend. Her daughter backed out because she heard it wasn't going to be capped, and then she came back in. So you're talking 8 students. You're not talking 2 or 3, and there's nothing in the course guide in any which way that states that there could be a stacked class if you don't have the right number.
Well, as a district, we always offer stacked classes, and by policy, even if we have 20 kids, we would take a look at whether that class would be feasible to run based on if we stack it or not. If there was Japanese 4 had 8 and another class had 8, if it's below that threshold. And part of that goes back to when we schedule in the spring, we get numbers that we have to use for staffing for the beginning of the year. Those are the numbers we have to start off with. They change back and forth many times, but we have to go with what we have to go with. I think it's important for you to realize that the fact that we're able to offer Japanese 5 at all is the crux of what this whole thing is all about, and we're glad that your daughter has the opportunity, as do the other students, to take that. Because had we been in a different situation, we may not have been able to even offer that particular class, and then we would have had a whole different dilemma where the students would have had to take it through a youth options or possibly, some other source.
I know, but these are students that have been investing all their time. They've been always told that all the way till 5th, Japanese 5, they're going to be in the CAP program, they'll have a class. I mean, I know they have a class, but it's just the point. I think that it's, what it comes down to is what I'm understanding, is that the resource too. But it seems like we seem to find the resource for a lot of other different things, but when you have some students that really have invested their time and their education into really having a good education, it's not happening.
Well, but you have to remember, when they were told that it's part of it's a CAP class, that's dictated by the university system, not
understand,
us.
yeah.
So when they say they're not doing it anymore,
Well, it's not that they're not doing it anymore.
They're
It's
doing it-
because it's a
capped
capped,
class, right.
yeah, they'll do it if it
Right.
was a single
Right.
class.
But as I said-
because it's stacked, they're not going to do it.
right, but the alternative to that is that your daughter can still go to school next year and test out of that.
Right, I understand. And then someone also mentioned to me about AP. But
Right.
however, I don't know if you guys realize, but an AP, to test out for AP for Japanese, even someone that speaks fluent Japanese can't even test out on that. That's how difficult that test is. And believe me, my daughter is a very intelligent person. She got a 34 on her SAT. So it's not like she could not even probably, basic fluent Japanese, people that speak fluent Japanese can't even test out of this. I mean, this is just, I don't think this is right. I think you guys should reconsider this stuff, or at least make it visible to everybody that if this ever happens again, their plans are gone.
Well, that's certainly something-
And I want you to also to know, I'm not saying that the teacher is shorting the students in any way. He's doing the best he can for a stacked class. It's just that she doesn't feel that she's getting the same out of the class that she should.
Well, I think after a short period of time, the jury's still out on whether that proves to be a fact or not, and the teacher and the student as the year goes on. But as far as putting it out there, I agree with you. We need to come forward and say a CAP class may or may not be offered every year, so students are aware of that.
Because there's nothing in the guide
Well, there's
saying
nothing
that.
in there because we don't have control over that, so we go with the assumption that it's going to be offered.
Well, or you should at least mention that if the numbers aren't there for language classes, that you should, it might be a stacked class,
Well,
just
we
so
have
they
done
know
that. Matter of
that.
fact, we've done that for German.
Okay, I've never seen it in here for Japanese.
Well, we've done it for German last
So
year.
it's actually in the guide?
As far as the recognition of the CAP class?
No, the recognition, the statement that if it's not enough people.
No, I can't
Okay.
say that's in the guide or not because I don't
Okay.
know. I'm just simply saying that's something we will
Because
probably
from
need
what
to
I
put in there.
understand, it really has to do a policy that's in place that it's up to the administration. That's what I understand.
As far as
Okay.
whether a class is offered?
It would know whether the class is stacked.
Absolutely.
Yeah. So then the administration, that's what I'm going to, I just feel that it should be revisited. I don't think this is
Well, we won't
fair.
revisit it this year. It's something we will continue to look at to see if there are better ways to do it. But because we've had great success with stacked classes over the years that allow students the opportunity to take those classes, But we're going to go back and take a look at our whole class offering schedule. Mr. Cohen and Mr. Nowak are looking at that right now because we have too many things that we offer every year, and we may have to look on an alternate year basis for some of these as well, which might eliminate the cap part of it and increase numbers in some of those classes, but we don't know that for sure yet.
So I'm going to ask you to please, if there's any further conversation, to make an appointment with, would it be with you or Mr. Cohen, or?
It
Because
doesn't make a
it's,
difference.
because it's not, it's just not anything that's a board policy. And we're glad to hear your,
I thought you told me to come to the board if I needed
no,
to speak.
I said you can always speak, and the administration is hearing you.
Oh, okay.
But it's not a board policy. We give this authority to the administration. So,
But we will not be revisiting it this year as far as any changes. Our staffing is already set.
Okay, well, were you
So-
from the Japanese class too, or are you something for something else? Oh,
I'm an American, man, I don't speak Japanese.
I was just wondering if you were a parent from the Japanese class. I'm sorry.
So-
Okay, thank you for your time.
Thank you very much for your comments.
In the US of A.
Are there any other comments from the citizens? Did you have any comments? Okay.
We just need, we were gonna talk about something, no?
You'd like to make a citizen comment? Okay, please come to the microphone and state your name and address.
This is regarding my grandson,
Okay, can we please have your name and address?
Donna McCall, 7136 South 49th Street, Franklin, Wisconsin.
If this is specifically about a student issue,
Yes, it is.
okay, it wouldn't be discussed at a board meeting, it would
Well,
be
no,
with the
it's
superintendent.
actually because my grandson is disabled, and he lives in the Franklin Oak Creek Joint School District, which he was in Oak Creek School last year. We filled out the thing to get him enrolled into Franklin.
Open enrollment?
Yes. They denied him, and I feel that they're being prejudiced against him because he's disabled, and he almost died because of the Franklin School.
Okay.
They kept my grandson in the, the Oak Creek,
Yeah,
the Oak Creek School.
I'm going to stop you. I'm afraid I'm going to have to stop you because we don't talk about specific student issues at a public meeting,
They
so.
told us to come here for that reason, though.
Yes,
Who did?
Who did?
The,
out in the
I don't know her
office out here.
Dr. Pats, who can we have help these people?
You can make you can give me a call, and I'll be glad to sit down and visit with you about it and take a look at it, all the information you want to
Who
share.
will?
I will,
You will?
yes.
Dr. Pats is superintendent.
Yeah,
and he'll
because-
personally help you and direct you to the right
Because
people.
my grandson almost died because of this.
We'll be happy to listen to what you have to say.
Yes.
Okay. Does anyone have a piece of paper we can get Dr. Pats' phone number?
Here, just take out one of the agendas.
Oh, you have a blank.
Just use it back.
And I was wondering, does anybody in here have, like the homeschooling papers available here?
Dr. Pats would
I
direct
would
you
have all
to
that
that
when
also.
you
When
contact
you,
me.
okay, yeah, and then we just come in and meet with you?
Sure, just give me a call, and we can set up a meeting time.
Works. Right here.
Okay?
Yep, that'll work.
All right,
Thank you very much. Any additional comments?
No, we just
Thank you.
got issues with this.
I can
Got
understand.
issues. I went to Oak Creek and I hated it. But I never learned Japanese.
Thank you very much. All right.
You should learn English.
Hearing no further community comment, I'm looking for a motion to approve the consent agenda.
So moved.
Motion by Mr. Lewis, is there a second?
Second.
Oh, I'm going to backtrack. Would anyone like to remove the item from the consent agenda? All right, so we had a motion from Mr. Lewis, second by Mrs. Witkowski. All those in favor say aye. Aye. Opposed? Motion carries. Thank you. Now, looking for a motion to approve the agenda.
So moved.
Motion by Mr. Nielsen, second.
Second.
Second by Mr. Alexandrovich. Any discussion? Hearing none, all those in favor say aye. Aye. Opposed? Motion carries. School board announcements. I'm going to start off, if no one minds, just to, and I'm sure you've all gotten it in the mail, to bring up the fact of the WASB regional meeting, which is on October 20th at Country Springs Hotel in Pewaukee, as in the past, and it starts at 6 o'clock, dinner at 6:30. So if you have an interest in attending the meeting or any questions, Yeah, I'll let Megan know to send out an email about it. And Mr. Lewis, if you have a question about, it's pretty descriptive in the pamphlet.
Yeah, I have the
Yeah.
pamphlet, thank you.
Just a quick consensus, is there anybody interested in attending that meeting? Just so we have an idea without, you, me,
Maybe.
maybe?
Probably.
Okay, so I'll ask Megan to send out an email. And the other item is, there are a lot of school personnel that are helping with the Kayla's playground build, and I just wanted to let the board know that between September 22nd and 27th, they are still looking for unskilled and skilled builders, and I know Mr. Lewis and I are helping out, so if anyone would like to help out, I'll send an email with the link just in case anyone is interested. Are there any other announcements?
Go ahead, Linda.
I did attend the Welcome Back event at the Sabre Center for all the teachers. A lot of energy in the group, lots of new teachers, and Tim did a really nice job representing the board. And, yeah, good start to the school year. I was going to ask you how many new teachers, but I could...
30?
30, okay. Yes, so, everything looked good. I got a chance to walk through the building. I think it looks, it's really kind of interesting that we don't have any construction, so it's like everything is as it is. I also got a chance to see the Pleasant View project, which is also finished and quite different than it wasn't before, so it's good to see everything ready to go.
Thank you.
I'd like to remind everybody that this Saturday, starting at 9 o'clock in the morning, is the Franklin Education Foundation consignment sale at Robin Hood Elementary. And also Friday, November 13th, is the Franklin Education Foundation beer and wine tasting at the new Root River Center from 7 and I believe 7 to 10 p.m. and that's Friday, November 13th. Two events that are coming up that I know are very popular.
Thank you. Anything else? Hearing none then, we'll move on to school board calendar. We have a regular board meeting Wednesday, September 23rd, here at the Education and Community Center at 6 o'clock p.m., and a regular board meeting Wednesday, October 14th, here at the ECC at 6 o'clock p.m. Item 8A, Personnel and Policy, 2015-16 Policy Review Schedule. Mrs. Witkowski.
Yes, I met with Judy and we talked about how we might handle the schedule. Also, I solicited your potential items that you wanted to review, and we compiled a list. I have since sorted the list differently. I'm going to pass this out to make it easier to facilitate our discussion. But our goal tonight would be to decide which policies we want to schedule for review in the next coming year. And this list is what was proposed by board members, and the other list, where is that list? Is it in the library or where?
It's attached to the agenda.
Oh, it is, okay. Sorry. Well, everything's attached there, okay. And I also wanted to mention that last year, just to kind of give us some context, we had a list of 28 policies. We did complete 16 of those. There were 12 left over that we didn't get to. 8 of those are carried forward to the list that Judy provided. The 4 remaining, 2 of those are on Jeff's. Jeff had proposed that those carry forward, and one was eliminated, 3631, the loan of school property. Was that eliminated, or it says it was eliminated? I'm not sure where.
Sorry, Linda, what number?
3631 was last year's that did not, it does show eliminate. Was it eliminated?
No, I don't think it was. I think the decision was that we would keep that as a policy, and it didn't need updating.
Okay, it was on last year's list as
Right.
eliminate, but it did not get eliminated or
No.
reviewed.
It was determined that we would keep it.
So it's not on any list going forward.
No.
And maybe we want to think about if we want to, you know, as a process of making sure that we roll things forward, we might consider that on our list here. And then graduation requirements was on last year's list, and you didn't bring that forward. It seemed to be important last year, but I'm not sure. But just so we're aware of that, I'm not going to press that at this point.
Sure.
So then, back to the list then that we have, the board members proposed. Judy did review it, and she has her comments, which are listed. And again, I resorted it so that we could discuss it in groups. The first one on the list is the internal communications, and that was eliminated by our action prior years. I still saw it in the list, and that's the only reason I kept it on here. It seems to be still in our policy listing, what we call it, a library, I don't know what you want to call it, but it's still there.
Okay, I'll check on that.
The next group is, there's 4 of them. Building access and security, that is on the list. There's no disagreement there. Dangerous weapons on school premises, that's on the list. Testing and assessment is on the list, and so is student progress reporting. So those all will be reviewed sometime next year. The next item was the student fees, and Judy's comments was that administrative rules need to be updated. Our policy is, I haven't read it, but it appears to
Yeah.
be, unless, Janet, you were in agreement with that you do not want it reviewed, or just want,
I just requested that the administration look at it and determine if it needed to be reviewed. And obviously, they determined the administrative rules. I didn't see anything in the policy. So-
and we don't see rules, or we should be seeing the rules, or?
Certainly, the rules are posted, you know, with the policy itself, but the rules do not come to the board for approval or readoption. The rules are the operational pieces of the policy in which we have the latitude of changing over time as needed.
I do have a question about that policy, though. It does say in the policy that the board will review fees every year, and I don't recall that we do review the fees, but it just seems to me that the business office it would be more appropriate to review the fees and bring it to the board if you needed to.
That's how it's operated over the
So
years.
maybe it does need to be changed or considered.
Take that out. We can take a look at that, sure.
Okay, so I'll work with Jim and report back if there's something that we want to follow up on. And then the next group, there's 7 of those, are identified as being proposed to eliminate because they may no longer be needed. And we're not going to decide on that tonight, but if we're in agreement that we should get these on the schedule for possible elimination in the next year, would we be agreeable to that? Or is there something on this list? And would administration this wouldn't be adding too much to the list?
I think that if indeed they end up all being eliminated, it wouldn't be a problem to add them to the list. It's just a matter of how many do you want to have on a list for a given year, you know? There's probably even more policies that we could potentially eliminate. We could put them on, and as we prioritize how we're going to approach these policies, kind of intermingle them and see if we can get some eliminated. Certainly, we could do that. I did a little work with the data on this, and we've, in the last 10 years, had the board review over 100 policies. And on average, the board can manage about 12 policies a year in terms of like discussion. Now that is pretty much what we've done on an annual basis, is like 12 policies that were discussed, reviewed, and updated, and perhaps eliminated. So, I mean, if we generate a list of 40 policies, we just need to be realistic that we are not necessarily going to ever accomplish our list for the year. It will always be a long list that we continue to add to and then kind of work off of. So I really have no concerns about that at all.
Is that what the board can handle, or what everyone, the administration? And
Probably everyone, to
Everyone.
be honest with you, Ms. Evans, because it does take a bit of time, a lot of time in some instances, to really do a review of policy, to get legal opinion, and then things, we don't get to things because the laws change, and those are things that we have to address immediately, and so, yes, and at the same time, the board wants to engage in discussion about their policy, and that takes time, and presently, we have one meeting a month where we work on policy work, in addition to the other things that the board does. So I just want us to be realistic about how long of, is it then really a yearly schedule for policy work? Or is it just this kind of long list of policies that we kind of work to accomplish? This is kind of, where we're at. Now, to your point, Ms. Witkowski, I think many of these could be easily eliminated if that's indeed how the board feels about it. But you never know till we actually get to the table and we discuss them.
I noticed,
Policies, I'm sorry.
oh, go ahead.
I just would make a couple points, policies, we have them because they're required by law. I made a list this afternoon. We have them so, to communicate what's required by law. So we have policy because it's required, and then we have a policy to communicate what's required by law because not everybody knows the laws or that they'd even exist. We have them to establish and communicate the expected practices of the board. We have them to inform the public in general. We can't put everything in our handbooks because the general public doesn't see those. Policies can help us avoid some ambiguity and inconsistencies and keep us out of litigation because we're not ambiguous or inconsistent. And then finally, it allows the board to take a position regarding operations of a district. So, there's a fine balance between let's get rid of all our policies and meeting these goals or these needs. So just kind of keeping that in mind.
Yeah, I would agree with that, because in looking at some of the ones that might be eliminated, I thought the public might not find that or might not want to search the statutes. But I was wondering with Mr. Lewis that a lot of yours were really old policies. Was that the intention just because they hadn't been reviewed in a while, or did you have specifics?
Yeah, so I kind of picked my policies based on 3 different factors. One was age and whether or not they've been reviewed within 10 years, and a majority of the ones I selected weren't reviewed within 10 years. 2 was whether or not they dealt with student safety or grading, class size, those types of factors. And the 3rd was just recent topics that I know, and I talked to Dr. Miller about this. In my day job, we're currently going through the same process of reducing our policies. We're close to almost 2,000 pages of policies, reducing them to a 100-page document. And so one of my pushes to Dr. Miller was how many of these policies can we actually reduce or eliminate completely, include in a handbook, potentially put the handbook online as a resource document or some sort of interactive PDF document or something to reduce the number of policies on the book, knowing that if we have a list of 10 policies or 12 policies every year and we have a book of 60 policies or whatever it is, that we're not going to be reviewing the policies. If we don't get to all 10 or 12 every year, we're just basically pushing off review on a lot of these policies, as we've seen, for more than 10 years, which doesn't necessarily make a lot of sense to have policies on the books that we don't review within a 3 to 5 year cycle. So, my push was really, can we simplify, can we create a synergy between the handbooks that we provide our staff and our students as kind of a go-to source, an interactive source. They still have the policy bite, but they're in a handbook form and not in a board policy that has kind of redundant language from policy to policy that the board shall review on X date and approved on this date. It just seems like there's a lot of redundancies, and that's the same thing that we're facing in my current job. So I thought it'd be a perfect opportunity to leverage some of those simplifications, synergies, whatever you want to call them. But if we have the opportunity to eliminate, I would be a strong advocate of eliminating them.
Yeah, I did take a look. We have 155 policies. I think I had Judy share the WASB recommended policies.
Correct,
There's
yep.
67 recommended versus our 155, and I like your goal of, we're not gonna look at them, why, we need to make it something we can be committed to.
Right.
And of the 155, 33% are over 20 years old since they've been reviewed. 21% are over 15 years.
Right.
So,
And, I think there's a strong point, obviously, for having policies that can protect us as a district for any potential or pending legal action, because I think that's my number one, in terms of having a policy and why we would have it on the books and why we would approve it and review it and make sure we're being diligent. But if we have so many policies that are 10-plus years old, we're not benefiting ourselves if it's outdated. For example, some of the current topics that are out there, non-discrimination compliance, it might behoove us to review some of that language. That might be one of the policies that we have to keep in place. But at the same time, with all the protections going on in terms of protected classes, actions for things that we may not even foresee current day, is that language up to code to protect us? So I think there is, there are numerous policies on this list that we should keep as policies and keep on our list. But if there are areas for us to simplify, I think we should. And I think it would simplify this review every year. We wouldn't have to be talking about 12 to 20 policies that we would review every year. We could back off a bit and maybe do a deeper dive on some. But I think this stuff is really relevant, so I'm glad that we're talking about it now.
If I could just make a comment about moving things to the handbook, which I agree, but I'd like to show by example what that might look, what it looks like now, and kind of why we wouldn't want to move too much to a handbook. One of the reasons we don't want to move too much to handbook is because our parents sign off on a handbook, and so do our employees. So they don't want to sign off on a document that's absolutely enormous. What I sent around the room was an excerpt from the handbook that the students have regarding bus transportation.
Two items.
And there's a single and then a stapled sheet. So the single sheet is what is in the student handbook for our elementary schools. And the first thing you'll see is it references board policy. And it takes the heart of what's in your policy and puts it in the handbook for the parent to sincerely read and sign off on. But when you look at our transportation policy, it has much more detail, which is necessary. So it isn't as easy as just taking something and putting it in our handbooks. We have to make conscious decisions about that. So as we work through this, I would just want to illustrate that to you as something that, again, takes time to discuss and determine as a board. So administration works together to try to bring to you what we think you need to work on and do to help support us in our work. And
On some of the older policies that haven't been reviewed, if you had reviewed the administrative rules, would you have indicated that on them? Or is it possible you changed the rules?
yes, it is possible.
It is
The rules
possible.
have changed, but the policy has not. So it could be a very old policy. And some policy statements are 1 or 2 sentences. They're not, large policies. We have to have them. There are 1 or 2 statements that say that we are going to do something, and then the rules do change, absolutely.
It's really important that we don't get misled to think that policies are the be-all, end-all either. The 3 things that you have to be concerned with policy are past practice, law, and negligence. Because no matter what you have in a policy, somebody out there will say, but you don't have this in that policy. So you can try to write detail after detail, and you're not going to get there. But if you can prove that, number one, you abided by a law, there was no negligence, or that you've had a past practice in terms of what you did, that's what's going to be the essence of what strengthens that policy. When Linda said that the WSB has 60 policies, and I know some districts who have 15 policies, but they're broader in perspective, but it goes back to, are we doing anything illegal? Because if you get challenged, we've gotten challenged on policies a number of times. The policy really doesn't mean that much, other than we have something in writing. But a good attorney is going to say, what is that policy interpreted, or how is it, what's the intent of it? And the intent goes to what have you been doing in terms of how that policy has been initiated? Like, if it was a bus rider, do you suspend kids if they yell out the window, you know? Well, if we didn't have that particular thing, and some kid was yelling out the window and causing a wreck, bus driver, or a good attorney could say, we don't have anything in there about a kid yelling out the window. So you have to be careful with policy, that they don't save you in all cases. They're necessary for sure, but I think you have to be careful on how many you have and what you try to put into them, because you cannot anticipate every detail that's going to be involved in a particular policy.
Plus, our policy says we can change the policy here at this board, unless it's state statute, anytime we want, when we're together by majority vote, so.
Whenever we get challenged on a policy, it's usually because somebody doesn't like the way we interpreted it. It's just like the athletic code, same thing. So it's fine until it happens to somebody, then it's, well, that shouldn't apply to me the way you have it.
So what, I think we kind of all agree, we're not trying to, we're trying to establish some review process. So we are, as a board, we're looking at these. That's what, you know, even this, your example of student transportation, which is on the list for being reviewed, the policy is not complicated. There's certainly a lot of administrative rules, but that, again, is informational. That's your thing. But the policy isn't that complicated. So I don't think just because it's a long list that we have to expect it's going to be a deep dive, as you said. These are reviews. We're not creating it from nothing. We're just kind of checking in on it, asking ourselves a few questions. Is it relevant? Has anything changed? And we have a discussion at the board level, and we can agree that it's fine. So I don't think this has to be a big legal review.
But I do think that if there are too many for 1 year, we can say we just have to look at it, but the administration does have to look at their administrative rules then. They just can't bypass that. And I think that's more in depth, isn't it?
Yeah, certainly if there's going to be discussion by the board, you know, we're going to, you know, take a look at things prior to that discussion and be prepared to talk through that with you. But if you were to just look at the list that I had generated for us as a starting point, if you just take a look at what's on that list currently, we need to talk about fund balance. That one we definitely need to do. We need to do something with the dangerous weapons in school. Some of these will be quicker. The ones that I'm recommending go in employee handbooks or eliminate, those will go pretty quickly. Let's see, communicable diseases, we need that updated. The 6,000 series, there's a few on there that are kind of priority, so I'm just pointing that out, that those are going to come to the top of the list. So whatever you're adding today from the list that you've generated as a board, you're going to have to tell me that goes to the top of the list, because otherwise it's going to go below the items that we believe the board needs to deal with first. And it may be second semester before we get to some of those things. So just to give you a sense of how much room is left in this schedule, we certainly can add to it, but the things on this schedule are viewed by the administration as a priority, unless the board directs us to put something ahead of it.
That WASB monitoring, the page that's in the, on board docs, monitoring overseeing policies, right near the end of the first page, it says, when approaching the process of evaluating current policy, the following questions may be helpful. That says it all right there, I think.
Well, I looked at, there's 16 on the list right now. 8 of those were from last year. They rolled forward, and 3 of those, of the 8 new ones, are requested from on this list already. 3 already are already on your list. And really, the remaining 5 then, 2 are because it's a change in law, and 3 are an update.
Sure.
So if we were to add every one of these to the list, we're really talking about adding things that we expect to eliminate. And again, it's not just me saying that. This is Judy in her preliminary look. So those, and then we also will be adding the group on the bottom, which is, there's 9 of those. And I also want to talk about one that Tim has on that list. But those, again, they're older. I think that's some of the reasons, we heard Jeff explain why he picked some of those, they're more current topics. I picked them really on the basis of when they were last reviewed. And there's 9 of those. So I think we should give it a shot, put them on the list, and maybe you intersperse some of the eliminations. You basically have fall, winter, and there's no spring on here. Are you expecting to put?
There's a couple spring
couple
on there. Those are really kind of ballpark in terms of scheduling them. I don't speak on behalf of the entire administration, but as kind of managing this process, bringing more of the policies into this list to eliminate, great. Some of the other ones, I don't feel entirely comfortable bringing onto this list. Just bringing forward something on contact minutes and teacher preparation time may cause a lot of angst for our teaching staff. If the administration does not feel a change is necessary, I don't believe that the board necessarily, unless they feel a change is necessary, should put that on a list for discussion. So I think we need to be careful about those decisions.
If I can make a recommendation, one of the things that I've done before with this, when you had the potential for elimination, was to go into this saying that we want to address whatever the priority policies are, 1 or 2 a month, whatever that might be, but then you have 2 or 3 that we believe are probably going to be eliminated. But then it's incumbent on the board to look at it before a meeting and walk in and not have an hour dialogue, but to just simply say, we all pretty much agree that, and then within a few minutes, you've taken care of 3 policies that are off the table, and then you can address those ones that are really pertinent to, that you want to pass or revise or whatever.
That's how I see it working. I don't know if anybody
I
else.
would agree with that, and I think if you add the elimination ones to the list, ones that we know are gonna be potential quick hits, then we touch, instead of 12 policies, we hit 20, and we eliminate 6 out of those. I think that's a good move.
So of the bottom 9 then, you want to take off the bottom 2?
Linda, what sheet are you referring to in 9?
The one that I,
Okay.
I counted them, there's 9.
There's 7 on
3,
mine,
4,
on the
5,
bottom
6,
group.
7. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Oh, you're right, 7, sorry. I get 9. So you would, Judy, you're saying the last 2 you're not comfortable with?
Correct.
I honestly, I would probably leave it up to Dr. Miller to say, pick the policies you think that we have chances of elimination, and just add them to the list as quick hits if we can do it.
I think you agree though, eliminates are okay.
I absolutely agree with that.
But we're on the bottom part of this list now. This doesn't say eliminate.
Oh, okay.
They say, let's look at them.
Yeah, I think those are the board's lowest priority. If we have a phenomenal year and get to them, great, but I don't think they need to be considered near the top of the list at all. I mean, if we want to add them, fine, but I don't know that it's going to be realistic to get to the bottom 7.
I think a couple of these, the non-discrim and the search and seizure, I'd like a little more time to work on that before. If I feel it should come after working with the officer at the high school or working with legal counsel, I would bring those. Same thing with the anti-harassment. Those are things I need to just check with legal counsel on, and if we need to review them, they'll come. As far as student transportation, we don't really see that policy needs to change. So I don't know why it would go on the list.
Well, again, we could do, to Dr. Path's suggestion, it could be a quick read. Everybody read it in advance. Is there anything that is it still relevant? We could ask ourselves those very questions you said. Is it relevant? Is there anything that we need, is there a reason for making a change? And if not, then we can say it's been looked at, the date changes, and we move on. I don't think it should be a huge thing, but I think we should, as a group, we should get more of these policies in front of us so that we are aware of them and we're looking at them. And that would be my intent. So I could see, to your point, the contact minutes and the teacher preparation time, it's sensitive, maybe we don't put those on, but I'd like us to at least attempt these.
Yeah, I mean, for the ones that if we know that there's a high probability that there aren't going to be changes, like the transportation or food service, or I don't know specifically, Dr. Miller, you know these policies better than anyone, but if we know some of them are on the list that are greater than 10 years, that a high probability that we're not going to change the language, if we read them and we're good with them, I guess I'm in agreement with Linda that it could be a quick hit, and we hit more policies than we have over the past, on average over the past 5 years, and now more of them are up to date than.
Maybe those don't need to be at the top of the list.
I agree, 100% agree.
Let's get through the meat of it, and then the ones that are, that aren't scheduled for elimination, but may just need some review, if we get to them, we get to them. But at least they can be on the master list. That's what you're asking for, right, Linda? Have them on the
Yeah,
list.
yes, but I also think that if you sprinkle them throughout the schedule, again, read them, come to the meeting prepared to say, I read them, I'm familiar with them, I have no questions. They're still relevant, and we're done.
I agree with that. But again, though, I would defer to what Judy's schedule is. I mean, to
Can we
be
just
honest,
try it?
the
We
fund
try it.
balance one might take up more time than we expect, and we're not gonna hit, one of the easy elimination ones, but I think everyone's in agreement on that.
Well, like student I read all these on this list briefly, and student transportation, I didn't find anything wrong, so on these ones, maybe you can just say first read, and that's where we just read it on our own, and then if we did find something, then we come back for a second read.
Okay.
I thought you were gonna motion to approve the
No,
the student transportation
not
policy.
unless you all read it. But I think, I agree it's a good idea to change the dates, so it looks like we are
Looking at them.
looking at the policies, like, if it doesn't take up too much administrative time.
So you, essentially, the board would just reconfirm the policy?
Mhm.
Okay.
How's that sound to everyone?
Yeah, I think
Any
it's a really good plan.
objections?
Yeah, although I think if there are gonna be questions and changes, then we need to reconsider moving the
Oh, yeah.
schedule.
Yeah.
It's not gonna necessarily happen at
Because
the
I would
same
agree with Melissa
timeframe.
on that.
Yeah,
Yeah.
I think
Definitely.
there might even be some on this, on Judy's list that are more than 2 years, if I recall, that went back to when we were looking at retirement options and things, but they had to be put off, so it'd be nice to get this list done.
There's always a possibility that one will come up that we have to address
Sure.
right now that we never even thought about, which we've already discussed.
Right.
Yeah,
Right.
that's true.
That happens too, but at least we're working on it.
Well, I'll redraft and send it to Ms. Witkowski first, and then we'll send it to the board.
Okay.
There is one policy listed near the bottom that has recommendations of no policy changes are currently recommended by administration, and that's the only one that I have on the list, and that's the grading scale. An issue that I thought the board, that we thought was kind of taken care of and put to bed last year, but I think it needs to be revisited, because we had information last year that the 4.321 grading scale would not be used at the high school, yet it is being used at the high school, and it's contrary to what we were told was going to happen.
No, it's not being used at the high school, Tim. What we told you last April 15th was that letter grades A, B, C, D would be used at the high school. That's exactly what we are doing. You were also told that we are still going to use rubrics and standards and so on. Doing the rubrics so that teachers can get consistency in terms of how they grade things. They may get a 4, 3, 2, or 1, but that's not the grade. That's for the teacher input, and the student would see that, of course, but then that's translated to a percentage and then to a letter grade. So nothing has changed. What we told the board last April is exactly what we're doing. They are getting letter grades, and that's...
Well, they were always going to get letter grades, but I don't want to dive too much into the meat of the policy and whether it should be changed or not. All I want to do tonight is feel that there's a need for a discussion for that policy. I believe that's what tonight was for.
Well, that's what we're saying from administratively. We don't think there's a need because there's no problem.
Okay. From my chair at the board, I believe there is, and so I would request that if there's board consensus, that we review the grading scale at the next meeting to just get this understood once and for all.
I guess it would be helpful then if you would inform us administratively what the concern is, because we have heard nothing from anybody else.
Well, my concern is that I'm getting rubrics returned to me from my kids at the high school that read 4.321. I'm getting a rubric that says 10.987. I'm getting communication through my children that the teachers really don't completely understand exactly what's going to go on. I get one assignment where my daughter was told the highest score she can get on this test because of where it lies in the rubric and what she's what the teacher is asking for the assignment can only be scored as high as a 2. So even if she and all the other students hit that assignment out of the park, the best they could be when that gets converted will be a C at that point in time.
Well, that's a whole different ballgame than a grading scale policy. That's not policy, that's an operational issue that, if in fact that is happening, then we need to take care of that with the administration and that teacher to find out exactly what's going on. And if it's a communication issue, we can deal with that.
Right, but the thing was, the new scale that was introduced, that was going to be introduced was 4321. Those were going to convert to a percentage, which is convert to a grade. And that was the big change. And then we were told last year, we are not doing that. We are going to have letter grades. We're not doing the 4321.
No. We said we were going to, that on the report card, we were very specific on the report card, because that was a big complaint from parents, that we want to see letter grades on the report card. I don't want to see a percentage of 4321. When it was explained to the board was told that we still want to be able to do the 4321. That's important for us from a perspective of being able to say that we have consistency on how teachers grade things, so that everybody knows what a 4 is, everybody knows what a 3 is. If students have access to that information, they can translate that. That's a translation issue. That's not a...
Right, but Steve, that's the enigma. No one knows what a 3 is. And this brings back the whole discussion that we had that other night. That was the whole point. And that was the whole reason why you got the parental pushback. And they know what a 91 is, they know what a 92 is, they know what the scale is, they don't know what a 3 is or what a 3.5 is. And my only point is, I think this is something that needs to come back again for discussion, because what we were told was not going to be in the handbook, which was the 4321, is indeed in the handbook. And that the high school grading scale was not going to change, and indeed it did change. And I personally feel that we were told we were going to have it one way, and we have it another way. And it's disappointing.
Well,
and I want it to be
you're
reviewed.
correct if it's in the handbook printed incorrectly, but what you were told is exactly what we're doing. We are grading A, B, C, D. When a student gets a report card, that's what they're going to get.
Then how do you explain an assignment coming back with a max of a 2? That's not an A, B, C, or D.
But that's Tim, that's an assignment, that's not a final grade. And that can be, Nick, you want to?
But it all works toward that.
I guess just a couple things, Tim, and I'd be happy to sit down and talk about it with you, at some point, and kind of address the concerns so that we can eliminate any communication issues that might be out there around that
Yeah.
process. You had referenced the policy. The board policy, as it current stands, has a conversion in it. So
I know. It
references
always
that
did have a
conversion
conversion
over.
in it. I
The
understand.
4321 on the rubrics is simply associated with a level on the rubric.
I understand.
Teachers aren't putting any of that data into the grade book. So what's going into the grade book is a percentage or a letter grade that's associated with the grade for the assessment that the students are receiving. So none of that, at the K-8 level, 4321s are going into the grade book.
And we
using
understood that,
conversion.
and I get that,
Yeah.
and that we were going to
Yeah,
do K
there are
through 8.
no 4321s are going into the grade book at the high school level. And so if there's confusion on the student level or the parent level around what's being communicated around that, then we should talk about that so we can address that communication issue and get that communication cleaned up. But in terms of that conversion, if you look at the two report cards, there are stark differences in terms of what they look like. The high school report card, very traditional, percentage, letter grade, amount of credits associated with the course. The K-8 report cards list individual standards that are attached to a 4321 number, and then that converts to a final grade that's on the top. In Power School, the differences, if you look at the parent access, at the K-8 level lists individual standards that are broken down by section, and they have a 4321 attached, and they're kind of laid out that way. The high school screenshot is going to be very traditional. It lists the assessment or the course, or the assignment or the test that's being administered. It's attached to a letter grade and a percentage, or an amount of points that are attached to that. And so, there are some pretty stark differences between that K-8 and 9-12 level. What I'm hearing you say is that there's some communication breakdowns happening around what data teachers are collecting and using versus what's being reported and given back to students. So, like I said, I'd be
I don't
happy to
know.
sit down with you and talk.
I don't
talk
know
about
that the problem was going through the school year and wondering where the students stood on it was on a 4321, because what's a 4321? The whole point was they didn't want the 4321. They were, they knew about the percentages, and that's what they understood. And so, yeah, I think there is a communication breakdown, but I don't think it's in me not understanding how this thing is supposed to convert. I know how it's supposed to convert, and I should have reviewed the meeting video before tonight, and I didn't, because I didn't think we were getting into this kind of discussion. All I want to do is have this be discussed again at the board level.
Okay, I did review the video. And to quote Mr. Cohen, he said, This is not a postponement. We are not implementing a standards-based model moving forward. But he did say we still will use rubrics, and we'll have class rank, letter grades, and percentages. And we will continue to use standards. And he said it's important to be consistent and have continuity. So are we not
I
being
understand rubrics.
consistent?
I understand having a rubric, you have to know what they're gonna learn. I don't have any problem with any of that. What surprised me is when they came back with, on those rubrics, 4-3-2-1. And in the handbook, 4-3-2-1.
I'm looking at the policy right now, and the policy does have rating levels of 4, 3, 2, 1, 0 in the policy, and it states all stakeholders will have a clear understanding of the criteria for demonstrating proficiency for standards. So if that were removed from the policy, although we are using that, though, from
In the
K through,
8, and
let's
we
just say
said at
K
that
through
night.
12.
We said that night that we're gonna have to review the policy again and make those changes.
There's another paragraph below that.
This talks about grading,
At the
but
middle, at the middle and high school.
it talks about grading only. Grading, to your point, letter grades will be determined and reported on report cards. But it still says rating levels are going to be used to describe student learning and achievement at all levels, K through 12. And I don't know if that's your issue, is whether this really is our policy, or if we're agreeing that should be the practice.
But this was the policy that was reviewed on June 18th, 2014, and at what point in time did we make the decision? Or the decision was made and we were told, we're not going forward with that kind of grading. That doesn't change this policy.
April 5th.
It might change the rating levels if you don't agree with those from K
Well,
to 12.
but if we're not going ahead with this, and this is what we have as a policy, maybe Tim's right. Do we have to review it because we said we're not going forward?
That's what started the firestorm, when we passed that policy, and that was in June of 14.
June.
And then April of 15, after 8 months of blowback, it was like, whoa, okay, we're not gonna do this at the high school.
But the policy says,
That's
rating
my point. That's
Right.
why I said at the time, at that meeting, we need to re-look at this policy.
Can I-
And just make that simple change, and
Can I just suggest
Never
that we push this to the next meeting as an agenda item, so we all have time to look at, review? Just pulling up the policy now, I don't feel,
oh, I didn't want to
Add-
discuss it
No,
tonight,
right.
Jeff.
No, no, I-
I want to discuss it next week.
and I think that's a fantastic idea, but if I don't want to get into the weeds too much.
I didn't want to
and,
either.
too late.
If we make it an agenda item for next meeting, I think that'd be a great idea.
I would appreciate that. If there's board consensus, I would like this on the agenda for next meeting.
Is there consensus for that?
I'm okay with that.
1, 2. Okay, then that will, if we could bring this policy back on the next board meeting.
I'd be more than happy to sit down with you to better understand it, share with my concerns.
That'd be great.
Okay.
Okay, so I'll work with Judy to get the schedule,
Send it to you.
and we'll work it out. And thank you for your input.
Thank you. Item 9, reports and presentations. Instructional Services Report 2015-16, Building and District Student Learning Objectives, Goals, and Continuous Improvement Framework.
That is correct.
Yes.
Yes, attached obviously to board docs is a report outlining the Franklin Public Schools school learning objectives for the year. I'll refer to this throughout the report as SLOs, which are school learning objectives, and teachers write SLOs as well, called student learning objectives. So that is your acronym crash course for this evening. As you're aware, I've presented with Dr. Miller in the past and other administrators on the Wisconsin Educator Effectiveness System for teacher and principal evaluation. And one of the beginning processes of this process is establishing school learning objectives. And it's an overall school goal. At the K-8 area, we've focused on, throughout the district, K-12 focused on literacy goals, and I've outlined these goals from a K-6 perspective. And then at middle and high, you'll notice that there are goals for both literacy and math, as we have content area focuses. At the elementary and middle school level this year, we're focusing on informational text, as it is a standard that is across multiple disciplines. So whether you're an art teacher or a literacy teacher or a social studies teacher, you are always using the skill, the disciplinary literacy skill of informational text. From the high school perspective, we're focusing on college and career readiness scores and in the area of reading. And then at middle and high, we're also looking at math as a goal for math teachers, as literacy does play a role in math, but we want to also make sure the other side of our tested areas have equal jurisdiction or chances towards improvement. So in the area of 7th and 8th grade, we're looking at improving scores in the algebraic thinking band of the MAP assessment that's administered in the fall and spring. And then in high school, again, we're looking at college and career readiness numbers to improve within mathematical scores. So I've outlined, you'll notice that all 5 elementaries have almost identical goals, as we're using a new form of benchmark assessments. And benchmark assessments are assessments that take place in the fall, the middle of the year, and spring, and that's where teachers gauge their subgroups of students that they're going to target to help grow to those next levels of proficiency. And then at the middle school, we'll be using MAP test data, as well as then college and career readiness numbers at the high school.
What does informational running records mean?
A running record is a common assessment that takes place for all kindergarten through 3rd graders, and we use the specific band or standard of informational text in reading and understanding, able to interpret what the author is stating in the text passage, and then the student pulls specific information to support the author's claim or what the author's asking for. Similar to the 4-6 tests are derived from Teachers College, which is part of our middle school literacy curriculum from Columbia Teachers College in New York, and they have actually homegrown assessments that are research-based and piloted in school districts, and we use those as our standard form of assessment to gauge our students' progress on those 3 benchmarks I outlined.
So it's a score?
Yeah, students are given a writing prompt, a text passage in all grade levels, K through 6, whether it's the running record or the 4-6 assessment. They read that and they have prompting questions to answer. Those are then scored on a rubric across grade level. So all 4th grade teachers score together, they norm, and they assess students at where they're at. And then from there, the teachers take that information, well, the schools, in this case, the school learning objectives, take that information and set a goal for growth and achievement in that specific standard. And then from there, teachers derive their SLOs and look at targeted populations of kids to help them grow to the next level of proficiency.
And this is all electronic testing, right? We're not...
Some of this is at the elementary level. There are actual passages they read and they write, or teachers record their answered responses. And then at middle and high, they are electronic, where there's a digital text. The text is lexiled at that grade level, and they're prompting questions they need to answer.
Okay. My other concern is that the goals exclude special education students.
That was looking at the building goal when it comes to the middle school. It's looking at moving, our focus this year, as Dr. Pat shared at the last school board meeting, was looking at improvement of Tier 1 universal instruction. That's not to say that students that are in special ed don't take these same similar assessments that are adapted for their IEPs. And then those kids are also part of those targeted populations to grow. But for the building goal this year was related to improving those Tier 1 students who aren't receiving additional services. And that's not to say that we're not still targeting the special ed or intervention group of kids in order to improve their ability on these assessments as well.
They're all taking the test, though?
Correct.
How is our RTI going?
As far as a district, very sound. Actually,
Very good.
Mrs. Kroll and I were speaking about that this afternoon on what we want to work with our RTI team as a district as a whole. As you know, Forest Park received 2 more awards this year for their RTI programming, and it's been the emphasis of Dr. DeZerk before me and myself this year with elementary principals to apply for some of those awards and align. We're doing really good work. I know Heidi Ersted pretty well, who's one of the Southwestern Wisconsin RTI coordinators, and often at conferences or with working with other districts, she refers to Franklin as our processes across the district.
Great.
Just a question on the SLOs themselves at the high school. So if we look at literacy at the high school, 10th grade is an increase of 6%, 11th grade is an increase of 8%. If we look at mathematics, 10th grade is an increase of 5%, and 11th grade is an increase of 5%. Are we hoping that by focusing with a higher goal at the literacy rate, we would then see increases at mathematics due to kind of the crossover in in the complex study, more complex study of mathematics at the higher level, or are we putting our eggs in the, a greater goal in the literacy basket solely because we feel that there needs to be greater growth in that basket versus mathematics?
That's a very good question. I think we want to grow regardless of math or literacy. We have more hands in the basket when it comes to literacy because a tech ed teacher can write a goal that's based on literacy. When you talk about technical reading and writing, that's informational text. Whether it be, like I said before, an art teacher, so you have more people than you do with a math department. It's just the math department focusing on that goal. And these are baseline numbers. So principals will meet with Dr. Pats and go through their entire SLO plan, how they plan to meet these goals and instructional strategies that take place. And then at winter time, they'll monitor the progress of these goals, and then they have that opportunity to meet with Dr. Pats and say, we already met this goal, we want to improve this, so we want to exceed these goals. So there's that opportunity at mid-semester to change the goal or recalibrate and say, maybe we set too lofty of a goal.
And I just want to understand, like, the numbers here. So literacy at the high school, 53% to 59%. So 53% of all students will, what does that mean?
So those are percentage of students who are measured as being college ready on the ACT Aspire, ACT exam, and so there are college readiness benchmarks. And so there's a percentage of students that have met that benchmark as being at that level, having the skills projected out to be college ready, okay, beyond high school.
So so they're below that then? They're not college ready?
So we're taking that percentage that is college ready and we want to grow that amount. So they're saying that on the previous assessment, 53%, for example, were college ready. They want to grow that to 59. So they want to increase the number of students that are college ready in the building.
So we're saying 47% are currently not college ready?
Correct.
47%?
On that exam.
On that one exam.
In 10th grade,
In 10th grade.
right?
Correct.
Do they use the same benchmarks at each grade level?
So it depends. Under the previous Explore plan that was taken, there were different benchmarks at each level. This uses the ACT benchmark, but the way that those, and when we do the assessment report, you'll see it this year, they band them. So for example, they're going to say that projected college readiness score for the student is the equivalent of an 18 to 22 on the ACT. So they provide a range. The high school took the midpoint of that range as their baseline and then went from there. So yes, they use the same benchmark, but they range it instead of the ACT, which gives kind of a flat score. And they're, again, saying this is a 10th grader. We're projecting well beyond 10th grade. There has to be some room for growth there for those students.
So we're technically being somewhat strict then on our interpretation of, if we're picking a middle point, our number of college ready would actually be larger if we took the ACT
Correct.
Aspires range. Gotcha.
Correct.
We're being a bit more rigorous.
Yes.
I guess I didn't quite follow that.
So the ACT Aspires range of college readiness would be, I don't know the range exactly, but 18 to 23.
And we picked the
And we're
middle.
picking 21 or 20 or whatever we're going to pick.
Right, midpoint.
So our percentage is going to be lower based on our more rigorous standards than if we chose the ACT Aspires
The
range.
range, the whole range.
Correct.
The lower end of the range, basically.
We're hiring the range.
Oh, okay.
We're increasing the range.
Correct.
So 53% of 10th graders right today would score 20 or 21 or 22, whatever it is, on the ACT. If we took ACT Aspires range, it would say 70% are ready for college, but that means that they
If we took
would
the top
potentially score an 18 on the ACT. So okay, that makes a lot of sense.
We're setting the bar higher.
On the Aspire.
Because we're not using the range. Okay.
Any other questions or discussion?
We'll have results then at the end of the year when we do our data report to see that each of these schools have exceeded these goals and all of our students have increased their achievement.
Nice.
Thank you very much. Item 10, board meeting debriefing. Are there any comments? I would just like to say that during community comment, I appreciate the board allowing, there are times when we have to explain to the citizens that we don't make the policy, and it's a good opportunity for them to come and talk to us, and have us all hear everything together, but we do have to forward it on to the administration and hope that they keep an open track that way. So, anything else? All right, future agenda items. Item A, Human Resources Report, Staffing in 2015-16 preliminary third Friday count for the September 23rd meeting. And Dr. Pat's, the instructional services report, annual assessment on the 28th. Will that be
That's
on?
when you want to push back a little bit.
We're going to push that one back because some of the state assessments from spring are still embargoed, and we can't share that data publicly, and so we're going to push that report off until a point in which we can share that data with the board.
Okay. And then we'll have the policy 6314 on September 23rd. And then, Dr. Pats, any word on any progress on building the goal for the?
Yep, we got the RFPs. Jim and Mark and I sort of deciphering through them. We're calling recommendations, if you will, and references and so on. And this week we'll have a pretty solid handle on the direction that we think we're going to go.
Okay. And then we had a committee for the board handbook, and that was Mr. Lewis and Mr. Alexandrovich. Did you ever get to meet on that ever?
Negative.
You want me to coordinate that and pull it together?
I mean, we didn't think, when we talked about it, we didn't know
It's just a
if anything
revision
would
thing
come
more than
up. It was
anything.
just,
Shouldn't be one meeting it, we can get it done. Right with you?
Yeah, that'll work.
Okay, I'll contact you both and we'll set something up.
Okay, I'm on vacation next week, but other than
Oh,
that.
you'll have to cancel that, I'm sorry.
Only week available.
Let me write that down.
We're getting down to crunch time too, so it's gonna have to, we have 3 weeks.
I don't
so,
know if-
You have plenty of time, be home. up all
Yeah, I'll be
night.
home and
Up all night.
plenty of time to read.
That's great.
yeah. I don't know if there's a hurry, but it's just, I remembered it was
Yep.
way back in April or May.
And just to be clear, Dr. Pat, so that the RFPs are to develop drawings, or what?
Well, the RFPs are just to get the architect so that we can get in, have somebody go in there, take a look at everything, and get the numbers that we need for the survey. We want to be able to put in the survey, adequate, or at least, potential numbers to some different things, like we did with the survey when we did the high school.
Okay. And we still have a subcommittee on that too, right? We haven't met since that first meeting.
As soon as we select that one, then we'll pull you guys in, and
Okay, the timeline is still,
we're still good. Yeah.
okay, and what was the timeline? Just refresh my memory, I'm sorry.
I don't have it right in front of me, but we weren't too concerned about doing anything
Oh,
until
okay. All right,
until
sorry.
later this year.
All right, okay,
And so on.
later this year. Okay, thank you.
I'm looking for a motion to adjourn. Motion by Mr. Nielsen, second by Mr. Lewis. All those in favor say aye. Aye. Opposed, motion carries. We are adjourned at 7:12.